The courthouse steps were cold that morning, even though the sun was trying its best to warm up the October day. Lily sat on the third step from the bottom, her legs dangling because they weren't quite long enough to reach the ground. She was 9 years old, but people said she looked smaller. Maybe it was because she tried to make herself invisible. That was easier than being seen. In her lap, she held the only thing that truly belonged to her. A cloth doll with button eyes and yarn hair that her mama had sewn for her 5th birthday. The doll's dress was faded now. Washed so many times, the pattern had nearly disappeared. One of the button eyes hung loose on a thread. Lily kept meaning to fix it, but she never had the right supplies. She never stayed anywhere long enough to ask. The town of Pineville wasn't much to look at. Just a main street with a few shops, a diner that made pretty good biscuits, and this courthouse that doubled as the place where the county handled all its official business. Behind the building, the Appalachian Mountains rose up like ancient giants, their peaks touched with the first hint of autumn color. Lily had lived in these mountains her whole life, but she'd never felt like she belonged to them. Or to anywhere, really. Mrs. Henderson stood a few feet away talking to a couple who'd driven in from 2 counties over. The social worker's voice carried on the breeze, all professional and practiced. Lily had learned to read that tone. It meant Mrs. Henderson was trying to sell something, and what she was trying to sell was Lily herself. "She's had a difficult time adjusting," Mrs. Henderson was saying, which was code for nobody wanted to keep her. "But she's a bright child, just needs the right environment." The couple looked over at Lily. The woman had kind eyes, but the man's face was harder to read. They whispered to each other, glanced at Lily again, then shook their heads. Mrs. Henderson's smile got tighter, but she kept it in place as they walked back to their car. That made 3 families who'd said no this morning. Lily wasn't surprised. She'd been through this before. Twice, actually, in the 2 years since the accident. That's what everyone called it. The accident. Like it was some small thing like spilling milk or dropping a plate. But accidents were supposed to be fixable, and there was nothing fixable about a mine collapse that took both your parents on the same day. The first family had taken her in right after it happened. The Colliers. They had 4 kids of their own, and they'd known Lily's parents from church. They'd meant well, she supposed. But their house was loud and crowded, and Mrs. Collier had too much on her plate already. After 6 months, they'd sat Lily down at the kitchen table and explained, very gently, that it wasn't working out. They said it wasn't her fault, but Lily knew better. Everything was always her fault now. The second family had been worse. The Pratts. They lived on a farm and needed help with chores. Mr. Pratt had looked at Lily like she was a hired hand, not a child. She'd lasted 4 months there before Mrs. Henderson showed up unannounced one day and found Lily mucking out stalls in the freezing rain while the Pratt kids watched TV inside. That placement ended quickly. Now here she was again, back on the courthouse steps like a piece of furniture nobody wanted at an estate sale. "Lily, honey, come here for a second." Mrs. Henderson's voice broke through her thoughts. Lily slid off the step and walked over, clutching her doll tighter. Another couple stood there, younger this time. The woman bent down to Lily's level, smiling too wide. "Hi there, sweetie. My name's Virginia. What's your doll's name?" Lily didn't answer right away. She'd learned that talking made people expect things from you. Expectations led to disappointment, and disappointment led to being sent away. "She doesn't have a name," Lily finally said, which was a lie. The doll's name was Rosie, after her grandmother. But that felt too personal to share with a stranger. The woman's smile faltered just a bit. "Oh, well, that's okay. Maybe you could think of one together." The couple talked with Mrs. Henderson for a few more minutes. Lily heard the words behavioral issues and attachment problems. She wasn't entirely sure what attachment problems meant, but she'd heard it enough times to know it was something wrong with her. Something that made her difficult to love. This couple left too. By noon, the courthouse steps had mostly cleared out. There was one more family scheduled to come by, but they were late. Mrs. Henderson kept checking her watch and sighing. Lily had gone back to her spot on the 3rd step. She was hungry, but she didn't say anything. Complaining about things like hunger or being cold or being tired was what kids with behavioral issues did. She heard the truck before she saw it. A deep rumbling engine that sounded like it had seen better days. The vehicle that pulled up was an old Chevy pickup, forest green with rust spots blooming along the wheel wells. It looked like it belonged to the mountains themselves, like it had grown up out of the red clay and pine needles. The door opened with a creak that echoed off the courthouse walls. The man who stepped out was the biggest person Lily had ever seen. Not fat, but tall and broad, with shoulders that seemed to fill up space. He had a thick beard streaked with gray, and his hair was pulled back in a short ponytail. He wore work boots that were scarred with use, jeans that had been patched at the knees, and a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up to show forearms roped with muscle and old scars. He smelled like the forest. Lily could tell even from where she sat. Pine sap and wood smoke and something else. Something clean like mountain air after rain. Mrs. Henderson's expression shifted from irritated to professional in an instant. "Mr. Hutchins, I was beginning to think you weren't coming." "Got held up at a job site," the man said. His voice was deep and rough, like gravel rolling in a stream. "Told the client I had somewhere important to be. Took longer than expected to make him understand." "Well, you're here now." Mrs. Henderson gestured toward Lily. "This is the child I told you about. Lily Mae Cooper, 9 years old. She's been in the system for 2 years now since losing her parents." The man turned to look at Lily, and she felt something strange happen. Most adults looked at her with pity or frustration, or that calculating expression that meant they were weighing whether she was worth the trouble. This man just looked at her. Really looked like he was seeing a whole person instead of a problem to solve. Lily stared back, trying not to show fear. She'd learned that too. Fear made some people mean and others uncomfortable. "Hello, Lily," he said simply. She didn't respond. Mrs. Henderson jumped in, nervous now. "Lily, this is Mr. Samuel Hutchins. He lives up on Laurel Ridge. He's interested in providing you with a home." Samuel. The name didn't fit him somehow. It was too gentle for someone so big and rough around the edges. "She talk?" Samuel asked Mrs. Henderson, but he kept his eyes on Lily. "Yes, she can be quite talkative when she's comfortable. She's just adjusting to the situation." Adjusting. Samuel repeated the word like he was tasting it, finding it bitter. That's one way to put it, I suppose. He walked closer but stopped a respectful distance away. Then he did something Lily didn't expect. He lowered himself down, not just bending, but actually sitting on the courthouse steps one level below her, so their eyes were almost level. "I'm going to be straight with you," he said quietly, just to her, like Mrs. Henderson wasn't even there. "I know you've been shuffled around. I know you've got reasons not to trust anybody. That's fair. But I'm here to offer you something. And you've got a right to know what that is before anybody makes decisions about your life." Lily's grip on her doll loosened just slightly. "I live by myself up on the mountain. I make furniture mostly. Tables, chairs, cabinets, that sort of thing. It's quiet up there. Real quiet. I've got a spare room that's been empty for a long time. And I've been thinking lately that empty rooms are sad things. Houses are meant to have people in them. Life in them." He paused, scratching at his beard. "I'm not going to lie and say I know everything about raising a kid, especially one who's been through what you've been through. I'll probably mess things up, but I'll try my best and I won't give up on you. That's what I can promise." Lily found her voice, small as it was. "Why? Why what?" "Why would you want me? Everyone else—" She stopped, not sure how to finish. Samuel's expression softened in a way that didn't match his rough exterior. "Because everybody deserves somebody who shows up. And I'm here showing up for you." Mrs. Henderson cleared her throat. "Mr. Hutchins, perhaps we should discuss the particulars in my office. The paperwork, the background check results, the home study report. Already done all that," Samuel said, standing up with a grunt. "You sent someone to inspect my place last week. Said everything was in order. Background check came back clean. You've got all my references from people in town. What else is there to talk about?" "Well, there's the matter of the trial placement period, and I know about the trial period. 60 days. I've read all the documents you sent." He looked back at Lily. "What I want to know is what she thinks about all this." Everyone turned to look at Lily. She felt her face get hot. Nobody had ever asked her what she thought before. Decisions got made around her, about her, but never with her. "I don't—" She struggled to find words. "I don't understand why you want to do this." "That's fair," Samuel said. "I guess I don't fully understand it myself. Just felt like the right thing. Sometimes you know things in your gut before your brain catches up." Lily looked down at her doll. Rosie's loose button eyes seemed to stare back at her. Will you send me away? She asked quietly. When I mess up? The question hung in the air for a long moment. Samuel crouched down again, this time close enough that she could see the lines around his eyes, the scar that ran through his left eyebrow, the silver threaded through his beard. Listen to me close, child. I'm not a man who makes promises lightly, but I'm going to make you one right now. I won't send you away. Not when you mess up. Not when things get hard, not ever. You understand me? The only way you're leaving my house is if you decide you want to go. And even then, I'll probably try to talk you out of it. Something cracked in Lily's chest. A small fracture in the wall she'd built around herself. It hurt, that crack, like ice breaking on a winter pond. Mrs. Henderson was talking again, something about schedules and school enrollment and check-in visits. Samuel stood up and listened, nodding at the appropriate times. But Lily could tell his attention wasn't really on the social worker. Every few seconds his eyes would drift back to her, like he was making sure she was still there. Finally, Mrs. Henderson finished her speech. So if there are no objections, we can proceed with the placement. Lily, honey, Mr. Hutchins will take you up to his home today. I'll come by next week to see how you're settling in. Does that sound all right? Lily looked at Samuel. He looked back at her, patient and still. She thought about the Colliers' crowded house where she'd been invisible. She thought about the Pratt's farm where she'd been nothing but free labor. She thought about these courthouse steps and how cold they were, how tired she was of sitting on them. Okay, she whispered. Samuel's face didn't change much, but something in his eyes relaxed. He nodded once, slow and deliberate. All right then. Let's get your things. Lily almost laughed at that. Things, plural. Like she had more than could fit in a paper grocery bag. This is everything, she said, holding up her doll. Samuel's jaw tightened for just a second, and Lily worried she'd said something wrong. But then he spoke, his voice gentler than before. Well then, I guess that makes packing easy. You ready? She slid off the step, her worn sneakers hitting the pavement with a small scuff. Mrs. Henderson handed Samuel a folder full of papers and gave Lily a hug that felt obligatory. Then she was walking toward the green truck, Samuel's heavy boots thudding beside her lighter steps. He opened the passenger door for her, and she climbed up into the cab. The seat was patched with duct tape, and there were wood shavings on the floorboard. It smelled like the mountains and sawdust and old coffee. Samuel got in on the driver's side, and the whole truck shifted with his weight. He started the engine, which rumbled to life like a sleeping bear waking up. As they pulled away from the courthouse, Lily turned to look back one more time. Mrs. Henderson was already walking to her car, probably heading to another placement, another child. Another set of steps. Lily faced forward, holding Rosie tight against her chest. She didn't know what came next. She didn't know if this would be different. She didn't know if Samuel really meant what he'd said about not sending her away. But for the first time in 2 years, she felt something strange and unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Something that might have been hope or might have been terror. Maybe they were the same thing. The truck climbed higher into the mountains, winding along roads that got narrower with each turn. Lily sat pressed against the passenger door as far from Samuel as the cab would allow. Her doll was clutched in both hands, and she kept her eyes on the side mirror, watching the town of Pineville shrink behind them until it disappeared completely. Samuel didn't try to make conversation. He just drove, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the gear shift. The radio was off. The only sounds were the rumble of the engine and the occasional crunch of gravel under the tires when they hit a rough patch. Lily counted the mailboxes they passed. 7, then 10, then 15. Each one meant a house, a family, people who belonged somewhere. After the 20th mailbox, she stopped counting. The spaces between houses grew longer. The trees pressed closer to the road, their branches reaching overhead like they were trying to hold hands across the gap. She snuck glances at Samuel when she thought he wasn't looking. His hands on the steering wheel were huge, scarred and calloused from work. There was a burn mark on his right wrist, old and silvered with time. His fingernails were clean but permanently stained dark along the edges, probably from wood stain or varnish. These were hands that built things, fixed things, made things. Lily had learned to read hands. The Colliers had soft hands that were always busy but never quite got anything done. Mr. Pratt had mean, hands that grabbed too hard and pointed too often. Mrs. Henderson had nervous hands that shuffled. papers, and squeezed too tight when they hugged. Samuel's hands looked strong, but they moved gentle on the wheel. Careful, like he was aware of his own strength and made a point not to use it carelessly. "See that hawk up there?" Samuel said suddenly, pointing up through the windshield. Lily jumped a little at the sound of his voice. She followed where he was pointing and saw a large bird circling high above the tree line, its wings spread wide to catch the air currents. "Red-tailed hawk," Samuel continued. "Probably hunting. They've got eyes so sharp they can spot a mouse from 100 feet up. Always amazed me, how they can see things we can't." Lily watched the hawk until the truck rounded another bend and the trees blocked her view. She wanted to ask questions about it, but the words felt stuck somewhere in her throat. Questions were dangerous things. They showed interest, and interest meant caring, and caring meant it would hurt worse when things fell apart. So she stayed quiet, and Samuel didn't push. They drove for another 20 minutes. The road got rougher, more dirt than pavement now. The truck bounced over ruts and rocks, and Lily had to grab the door handle to keep from sliding around on the seat. Samuel drove like he knew every hole and bump by memory, steering around the worst spots with ease. Then he slowed down and pointed again, this time off to the left. "Deer, 3 of them!" Lily looked and saw them immediately. A doe and 2 fawns, their coats spotted with white, standing absolutely still at the edge of a small clearing. They watched the truck pass with dark, liquid eyes, alert but not frightened. "This far up the mountain, they're not as scared of vehicles," Samuel said. "Don't see enough of them to worry much. Come winter, they'll move down closer to the valley where there's more food. But for now, they've got it good up here." Lily thought about that. Moving when things got hard. Going where the food was. That made sense. That's what she'd been doing for 2 years now. Just moving from place to place, trying to find somewhere that had what she needed. The road curved sharply, and suddenly the trees opened up on the right side. Lily caught her breath without meaning to. Below them, the valley spread out like a green and gold quilt. Patches of forest and farmland stitched together with roads and streams. The mountains rolled away into the distance, layer after layer of them, each one fainter and more blue than the last until they disappeared into the haze at the horizon. "First time seeing it from up here?" Samuel asked. Lily nodded, not trusting her voice. "It's something, isn't it? I've lived in these mountains my whole life, and that view still gets me every time. Something about seeing how big the world is, but also how all the pieces fit together. Makes you feel small and part of something big at the same time." He let the truck idle there for a moment, giving Lily time to look. She'd lived in the shadow of these mountains forever, but she'd never seen them like this. From down in the valleys, they were just walls around you, but from up here, they were something else entirely, something beautiful and old and patient. Samuel put the truck back in gear and they continued climbing. The road got even narrower, barely wide enough for one vehicle. Tall grass grew up in the middle where tires didn't usually go. This wasn't a road that saw much traffic. "Almost there," Samuel said quietly. Lily's stomach tightened. Almost there. Almost to the place that would be hers or not be hers or be hers for a little while until something went wrong. She'd learned not to call places home anymore. The word felt too heavy, too permanent for the temporary spaces she moved through. They came around one more bend, and there it was. The cabin sat in a clearing, surrounded by tall pines and oaks that had probably been there for 100 years. It was built from logs, real ones, dark with age and weather. The roof was metal, green with moss in places. A stone chimney rose from one side and a wooden porch wrapped around the front. There were flower boxes under the windows, though the flowers in them had mostly finished blooming for the season. Behind the cabin, Lily could see a large workshop with big doors that stood open. Beyond that, a small garden plot, neat rows marked with stakes. A chicken coop sat off to one side, and she could hear the soft clucking of hens. It looked like something from a storybook. The kind of place where people in movies lived when they wanted to get away from everything. Except this wasn't a movie, and Lily had learned that pretty things could hide ugly truths. Samuel parked the truck near the porch and turned off the engine. The sudden silence felt loud in Lily's ears. She could hear birds singing, wind moving through the trees, the distant sound of water running somewhere. "Come on," Samuel said, opening his door. "I'll show you around." Lily climbed down from the truck, her legs feeling shaky after the long ride. She stood there holding Rosie, looking up at the cabin, trying to imagine herself living here, trying to figure out where the catch was, what the real reason was that Samuel had brought her here. Samuel walked up the porch steps, which creaked under his weight. He held the front door open and waited for her to follow. Lily's feet felt heavy as she climbed the steps. The porch was swept clean with 2 rocking chairs positioned to face the view of the valley. There was a small table between them with a lantern sitting on top. She stepped through the door into the cabin. Inside was nothing like she expected. It was simple but not bare, lived in but not messy. The main room served as living area and kitchen combined. A wood stove sat against one wall, its surface clean and the firewood beside it neatly stacked. A handmade table with 4 chairs occupied the space near the kitchen area. The counter was old butcher block, scarred with use but scrubbed spotless. Shelves held dishes and jars of what looked like preserved vegetables and fruits. The living area had a couch that looked comfortable but worn, a reading chair with a lamp beside it and a bookshelf crammed with books of all sizes. The floor was wood plank, covered here and there with braided rugs. Everything was made by hand, Lily realized. The table, the chairs, the shelves, probably even the bed frame she could see through a doorway that must lead to Samuel's room. What struck her most was how clean it was. Not sterile clean like a hospital, but cared for clean, like someone took pride in this space. Bathrooms through there, Samuel said, pointing to a door on the left. Water comes from a spring up the mountain. Cold as ice, but clean. I heat water on the stove for baths. He walked across the room to another door and opened it. This would be your room. Lily followed slowly, still ready to bolt if she needed to. She stepped into the doorway and looked inside. The room was small, but it had a window that looked out toward the mountains. There was a bed with a metal frame, made up with sheets and a quilt that looked like it had been pieced together from dozens of different fabric scraps. A small dresser stood against one wall. A wooden trunk sat at the foot of the bed. And on the wall near the window, someone had hung a shelf with 3 small carved animals sitting on it. A bear, a rabbit, and a fox. Made those last week, Samuel said, nodding toward the shelf. Thought you might like them. If you don't, that's fine. I can take them down. Lily walked into the room slowly. She set Rosie down on the bed carefully, then went to look at the carved animals. They were beautiful, each one detailed and smooth, clearly made by someone who knew what they were doing. The bear stood on its hind legs, the rabbit sat with its ears up, and the fox looked like it was mid-step. Forever caught in the moment before running, she touched the fox gently with one finger. You can take them down if you want, Samuel said again, quieter this time, or move them around. This is your room. You get to decide how it looks, your room. Nobody had said that to her before. The Colliers had given her space in a room shared with their youngest daughter. The Pratts had put her in what was basically a storage closet with a cot, but this was different. This room was empty except for things meant just for her. It's nice, Lily whispered, because it was true and because she didn't know what else to say. Samuel nodded. Good, I'm glad you think so. You hungry? It's past lunchtime. I could make us some sandwiches. Lily realized she was starving. She'd been too nervous to eat breakfast. And the morning on the courthouse steps felt like it had happened days ago instead of hours. Yes, sir, she said. You don't have to call me sir, Samuel said as they walked back to the main room. Samuel's fine, or Sam if you want. Lily didn't respond to that. Sir felt safer. Sir kept distance between them. Samuel moved around the kitchen with surprising grace for such a big man. He pulled out bread from a box, cheese from a small icebox, and sliced tomatoes from a bowl on the counter. He made 2 sandwiches, cut them in half and put them on plates with some pickles on the side. They sat at the table, and Lily ate slowly, carefully, trying not to seem too hungry. But the sandwich was good, the bread fresh, the tomatoes sweet, and the cheese sharp. She finished everything on her plate without meaning to. Want another? Samuel asked. She wanted to say yes, but she shook her head. Taking too much felt greedy. Samuel looked at her for a long moment, then stood up and made another half sandwich, putting it on her plate without asking again. Growing kids need to eat. Don't ever feel bad about being hungry here. Lily looked at the sandwich. Her stomach was still growling despite what she'd already eaten. She picked it up and took a bite, and Samuel went back to eating his own food like it was the most normal thing in the world. After lunch, Samuel showed her the rest of the property. The workshop where he built furniture, the air inside thick with the smell of sawdust and varnish, the garden where he grew vegetables, most of them finished for the season but a few late tomatoes still hanging on. The chicken coop where 5 hens pecked around, clucking softly when Samuel scattered some feed for them. "They'll be your responsibility if you want," Samuel said, feeding them, collecting eggs. "But only if you want, not a requirement." Everything here seemed to come with that same message. If you want, your choice, not a requirement. Lily didn't know what to do with that kind of freedom. She was used to being told what to do, when to do it, how to do it right. This feeling of being asked instead of told made her nervous. They walked back to the cabin as the sun started sinking lower, turning the sky orange and pink behind the mountains. Samuel gathered firewood from the pile on the porch and started building a fire in the wood stove. "Gets cold up here at night," he explained. "Even in early fall. You'll want an extra blanket on your bed probably. There's more in the trunk in your room." Lily stood in the middle of the main room holding Rosie again, not sure what to do with herself. Samuel went about his business, stoking the fire, pumping water into a kettle to heat for tea, moving around the space like she wasn't there, but not like she was invisible. More like he was trying to let her settle without forcing anything. "You can explore if you want," Samuel said, catching her watching him. "Or sit and rest, or go to your room if you need quiet. There's no schedule tonight. We'll figure out routines tomorrow." Lily walked slowly around the cabin, looking at things more carefully now. The books on the shelf were mostly about woodworking, nature, history. There were a few novels tucked in there too. On one shelf sat an old photograph in a simple frame. A woman with kind eyes and dark hair smiling at the camera. Lily wondered who she was but didn't ask. When the kettle whistled, Samuel made tea and poured 2 cups, adding honey to both without asking if Lily wanted any. He set 1 cup on the table for her and took his to the reading chair. Lily sat at the table and wrapped her hands around the warm cup. The heat felt good. The tea tasted like nothing she'd had before, sweet and earthy at the same time. "It's chamomile," Samuel said, like he'd heard her unspoken question. "Helps you sleep. Grow it in the garden." They sat in comfortable silence as the fire crackled and the cabin grew darker. Samuel lit a few oil lamps, their warm glow pushing back the shadows. Outside, crickets started their evening song. "You can go to bed whenever you're tired," Samuel said eventually. "I'm usually up early, but you can sleep as long as you need. No rush tomorrow." Lily was tired. The day had been long and strange and overwhelming. She stood up, rinsed her cup in the sink like she'd been taught, and turned toward her room. "Lily," Samuel said, stopping her. She turned back, her whole body tensing. His expression was serious but not scary. "I meant what I said earlier. You're not being sold. You're not a burden. You're not temporary. I know you don't believe that yet, and that's okay. But I'm going to keep saying it until maybe someday you do." Lily's throat felt tight. She nodded once, quick and small, then hurried to her room before the feeling in her chest could turn into something messy like crying. She closed the door and stood there in the darkness for a moment, letting her eyes adjust. The moonlight came through the window, painting everything silver. She could see the outline of the bed, the dresser, the shelf with the carved animals. She changed into the nightgown that Mrs. Henderson had packed in the paper bag, brushed her teeth in the bathroom with the toothbrush and paste Samuel had set out for her, then climbed into the bed. The quilt was heavy and warm. The pillow smelled like fresh air and sunshine, like it had been dried outside on a line. The mattress was more comfortable than any she'd slept on in the last 2 years. Lily lay there in the darkness, holding Rosie close, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the cabin settling around her. She could hear Samuel moving around in the main room, the soft clunk of him banking the fire for the night, the creak of the floorboards as he went to his own room. Then silence, deep mountain silence broken only by the wind in the trees and the distant call of an owl. Lily stared at the ceiling and tried not to think about how many days she had before this all fell apart. 60 days, Mrs. Henderson had said. A trial period. She'd been on trial her whole life, it seemed, always being tested, always being found wanting. But for tonight, in this small room with its handmade quilt and carved animals and window full of stars, she let herself pretend. Just for tonight, she pretended this might be different. Just for tonight, she pretended she might be chosen instead of sold. And despite everything she'd learned about not hoping, not trusting, not believing in good things, Lily closed her eyes and fell asleep feeling almost safe. The first morning, Lily woke before dawn. Old habits died hard. At the Pratt's farm, sleeping past sunrise meant extra chores as punishment. At the Collier's house, the early hours were the only quiet time before chaos took over. She lay in bed listening to the mountain sounds filtering through her window, birds she couldn't name singing songs she didn't recognize, the wind moving through pine trees, and from somewhere in the cabin the quiet sounds of Samuel already awake. Lily got dressed quickly, made her bed with careful corners the way she'd been taught, and opened her door. The main room was warm, the wood stove already crackling with fresh fire. Samuel stood at the counter slicing bread. "Morning," he said without turning around. "Sleep all right?" "Yes, sir. There's a pitcher of water on the table. Glasses in the cabinet above the sink if you're thirsty." Lily poured herself water and sat at the table, back straight, hands folded in her lap, waiting for instructions, waiting to be told what to do, how to do it, what she'd done wrong already without knowing it. Samuel brought 2 plates to the table. Fried eggs, thick slices of bacon, toast with butter melting into it. More food than Lily usually ate for breakfast. More food than seemed necessary. "Eat up," Samuel said, sitting down across from her. "We've got a full day, but no rush on it." Lily ate slowly, watching Samuel between bites. He ate like someone who'd worked hard his whole life, efficiently but not frantically. When he finished, he pushed his plate aside and looked at her directly. "So here's how I figure things," he said. "You probably want to know what I expect from you. What the rules are. That fair?" Lily nodded. "All right. Rules are simple. Clean up after yourself. Do your schoolwork when school starts up again next week. Help out with chores that need doing. Be honest with me, even when it's hard. That's about it." Lily waited for more. There was always more. "Don't talk back. Don't complain. Don't ask for things. Don't make noise. Don't take up space." "But Samuel just sat there apparently done with his list, that's all?" she asked quietly. "That's all. I'm not complicated. I don't believe in 100 little rules that don't mean anything. Long as you're respectful and pull your weight, we'll get along fine." He stood up and collected the plates. "Today I'm working in the shop. Got a table to finish. You're welcome to come watch if you want. Or you can explore around the property. Stay within sight of the cabin for now, just so I know you're safe. Sound good? What chores do you want me to do?" Samuel paused at the sink. "Well, the chickens need feeding and watering. Eggs need collecting. Beyond that, maybe sweep the porch. But that can wait until afternoon if you want to settle in more." Lily stood up quickly. "I can do it now." Samuel studied her for a moment, something unreadable in his expression. Then he nodded. "Chicken feed's in the barrel next to the coop. There's a basket by the door for eggs. Take your time with it." Lily practically ran outside, relieved to have a task, something to do with her hands, a way to prove she was worth keeping. She found the barrel of feed easily, scooped some into a bucket, and headed to the chicken coop. The hens clucked at her curiously as she scattered their food. She refilled their water from the pump near the garden, then carefully reached into the nesting boxes for eggs, 6 of them still warm in different shades of brown and cream. She placed them gently in the basket and brought them inside. Samuel was still in the kitchen washing the breakfast dishes. "That was quick. Find all the nests okay?" "Yes, sir. 6 eggs, good haul. Put them in the bowl on the counter there." He dried his hands on a towel. "You ever feed chickens before?" "At the Pratt's farm. They had chickens. And pigs and goats and a cow. Did you like it? Taking care of animals?" Lily thought about that. She liked the animals well enough. They didn't judge or criticize. They just ate and clucked and existed. "I guess so. Well, those 5 hens out there are pretty easy. They lay more eggs than I can eat myself, so having you here means fewer eggs go to waste. They've got names, but they probably won't tell you what they are, so you can call them whatever you want." The corner of Lily's mouth twitched. Almost a smile, almost. The days fell into a rhythm. Lily woke early, fed the chickens, collected eggs. Samuel made breakfast. Then he'd head to his workshop while Lily found things to keep herself busy. Sweeping, organizing, wiping down surfaces that were already clean. She was terrified of being idle, of seeming lazy, of giving Samuel any reason to change his mind about her. After 4 days, Samuel finally said something about it. "You know you don't have to work every minute of the day, right?" He was sanding a table leg, his big hands moving in smooth practice strokes. Lily had been sweeping the workshop floor for the 2nd time that day. "I don't mind," she said quickly. "I want to help. I appreciate that. But children are supposed to play sometimes, too. When's the last time you just did something for fun?" Lily couldn't remember. Fun felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Fun was what kids with stable homes did. Kids who weren't one mistake away from being sent away. I'm fine, she said. Samuel set down his sandpaper and looked at her, really looked at her the way he had on the courthouse steps. Lily, you're working yourself ragged trying to prove something. But there's nothing to prove. You're already enough just as you are. The words hit her wrong, made her chest feel tight and her eyes burn. She turned away quickly. I should check on the chickens. Already fed them twice today. Then I'll weed the garden. Lily. His voice was gentle but firm. Stop, just for a minute, stop. She froze, her whole body tense. Samuel sighed, a long breath that sounded tired. I'm not mad at you. You haven't done anything wrong. I just don't want you to think you have to earn your place here. You already have a place here. You had it the moment I brought you home. Home. He kept using that word so casually, like it was simple, like it was true. I need to feel useful, Lily said quietly. I understand that. But useful and exhausted aren't the same thing. Take breaks, rest, be a kid. He picked up his sandpaper again. Tell you what. Tomorrow's Saturday. No work in the shop for me. How about we go into town? Get you some proper clothes that fit, maybe stop by the library. Would you like that? Lily looked down at her clothes. They were clean but worn. Some from donation boxes, some that had belonged to other children in other homes. Nothing fit quite right. Okay, she said, good. Now go find something to do that isn't a chore. Read a book, explore outside, just sit and watch the clouds. Something that doesn't involve work. Lily left the workshop and walked to the edge of the clearing, where she could see down into the valley. She sat on a fallen log and held Rosie in her lap. Just sat. It felt strange and wrong and uncomfortable. But she did it anyway, because Samuel had asked her to. And following instructions was the one thing she knew how to do. The next Saturday came, and they drove into town in the old green truck. Samuel took her to a small store where the woman behind the counter knew him by name. She measured Lily with kind efficiency and pulled out jeans that actually fit. Shirts and colors Lily liked, a warm jacket for when the weather turned colder. Pick out what you want, Samuel said. Lily chose carefully. The least expensive things, the plainest items. Samuel watched her select a single pair of jeans and 2 shirts, then quietly added more to the pile when she wasn't looking. At the register, Lily saw how much everything cost and felt sick with guilt. That was so much money. Too much money for someone like her. It's fine, Samuel said, like he could read her thoughts. Everyone needs clothes. That's not extra or special, that's just necessary. They stopped at the library next. It was small, just 2 rooms in an old house, but it smelled like paper and possibilities. The librarian, an older woman with silver hair, brightened when she saw Samuel. Samuel Hutchins. Haven't seen you in a month. And who's this? This is Lily, she's staying with me. Thought she might like to get a library card. The librarian smiled at Lily. Well, we'd love to have you. Do you like to read? Lily nodded. Reading had been her escape at both the Colliers and the Pratts. Books were portable, private, a door into other worlds where she didn't have to be herself. What do you like? Adventure, mystery? Animals? All of it, Lily whispered. 20 minutes later, Lily walked out with a library card in her name and 5 books in a canvas bag Samuel had bought at the counter. Real books chosen by her that she could keep for 2 whole weeks. On the drive home, Lily held the bag of books in her lap like treasure. She felt something dangerous growing in her chest. Something that felt like gratitude, like happiness, like trust. She tried to squash it down, but it kept bubbling up anyway. That night after dinner, Lily sat on the porch with one of her library books while Samuel sat in the other rocking chair, whittling something from a piece of pine. The sun set behind the mountains, painting everything gold and orange. The air smelled like autumn and wood smoke. Samuel? Lily said, testing his name without the sir attached. Yeah? Thank you. For today. He looked over at her, his weathered face softening. You're welcome. We'll make it a regular thing going into town. Once a week or so, get books, pick up supplies, maybe get lunch at the diner. Give you a chance to see other people, not just be stuck up here with me. I don't feel stuck, Lily said quietly. Good. That's real good. They sat in comfortable silence until the stars came out, and Lily thought maybe, just maybe, this could work. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. 2 weeks after Lily arrived, she was washing dishes after breakfast, being careful the way she always was. But the plate was slippery with soap and her hands were small and it slipped. Just slipped right through her fingers and shattered against the edge of the sink. The sound of breaking ceramic seemed to echo through the whole cabin. Lily froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her breath came fast and shallow. Every muscle in her body tensed, ready for what came next. The yelling. The punishment. The disappointed look that said she was more trouble than she was worth. At the Pratt's farm, breaking dishes meant no dinner. At the Collier's house, it meant lectures about being more careful, more mindful, more better than she was. Samuel appeared in the doorway from his bedroom, probably hearing the crash. Lily stood there with soap dripping from her hands, staring at the broken pieces in the sink, waiting for everything to fall apart. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I'll clean it up. I'll be more careful. Please, I'm sorry." Samuel walked closer and Lily flinched without meaning to. She hated that she flinched. Hated that her body expected violence even when her brain knew Samuel had never raised a hand to her. He stopped a few feet away, giving her space. His voice when he spoke was calm, almost gentle. "Lily, look at me." She forced herself to meet his eyes. They weren't angry. They weren't disappointed. They were just sad, but not because of the broken plate. "It's just a plate," Samuel said. "Plates break. Glasses break. Things break. That's what things do. They're just objects. They can be replaced, but I broke it. I wasn't careful enough. You were washing dishes and your hands are small and the plate was slippery. That's called an accident. Accidents happen to everyone. They're going to keep happening for your whole life, and that's okay." Lily felt tears building behind her eyes, and she tried desperately to hold them back. Crying was weakness. Crying made people uncomfortable. "Crying proved you couldn't handle things. I can pay for it," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't have money now, but when I do—" "Stop." Samuel's voice was firm but not harsh. "Just stop. You're not paying for anything, and you're not in trouble. Do you understand me? You are not in trouble." A tear escaped, rolling down her cheek. Then another. Then her whole face was wet and she was crying in gulps and hiccups that she couldn't control. "I thought you'd send me away," she sobbed. "I thought this was it. I thought I messed up too bad. Oh, child." Samuel moved closer, slowly, carefully. "Is that what you've been afraid of this whole time? That one mistake would be the end?" Lily nodded, unable to speak through the crying. "Come here," Samuel said softly. Lily didn't move at first, but then Samuel opened his arms, not grabbing, just offering, and something in Lily broke wider than the plate. She stepped forward into the hug, and Samuel wrapped his big arms around her carefully like she was something precious and fragile. He was warm and solid and smelled like sawdust and coffee. He didn't tell her to stop crying. He didn't tell her she was being silly. He just held her while she cried 2 years' worth of fear and grief and exhaustion into his flannel shirt. "I've got you," he murmured. "I've got you, and I'm not letting go. Not today, not tomorrow. Not because of a broken plate or a broken anything. You hear me? I'm not letting go." Lily cried until she had nothing left. When she finally pulled back, Samuel's shirt was soaked through and her face was blotchy and swollen. She felt embarrassed and raw and somehow lighter. "Sorry I got your shirt all wet," she mumbled. "Shirt's dry. You feeling better?" Lily nodded. Then, because she needed to hear it again, she asked, "You're really not mad? Not even a little bit. Now how about you go splash some cold water on your face while I clean up this plate? Then we'll have some tea, and maybe you can tell me about that book you've been reading." Lily went to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were red and puffy, her cheeks splotchy. She looked like a mess, but she also looked like something else. Something lighter. Like crying had released pressure she'd been holding on to for so long she forgot what it felt like to breathe all the way. When she came back out, the broken plate was gone, swept up and disposed of. Samuel had the kettle on and 2 cups waited on the table. They sat together drinking chamomile tea while Lily told him about the book she was reading, about a girl who lived in the prairie and survived blizzards and hard times. Samuel listened like every word mattered, asking questions, making observations, treating her thoughts like they were valuable. That night, after Lily went to bed, she heard Samuel on the phone in the main room. His voice carried through the thin walls, low but clear. "Mrs. Henderson, it's Samuel Hutchins. I need to talk to you about something." "No, nothing's wrong." "Well, actually, something is wrong, but not with Lily. It's the situation. That child has been walking on eggshells since she got here, terrified of making one wrong move. Yes, I understand the trial period, but I need you to understand something. This isn't a trial for me. I'm not testing her out to see if she's worth keeping. I've already decided. She's mine. She's my daughter. I don't care what the papers say right now. In my heart, that child is already home. I know there's a process. I'm saying I want to start whatever process makes this permanent. Adoption, guardianship, whatever it takes. Because Lily needs to know she's not temporary. No, I don't need more time to think about it. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Lily lay in the darkness, holding Rosie tight against her chest. She'd heard every word through the wall. She's mine. She's my daughter. That child is already home. For the first time since the mind collapse took her parents, Lily felt like maybe the universe hadn't completely forgotten about her. Maybe there was still good in the world. Maybe broken things could be put back together, not the same as before, but strong in new ways. Maybe she really had been chosen after all. She fell asleep with tears on her face again, but this time they weren't from fear. They were from something else entirely. Something that felt like hope taking root in soil that had been too dry for too long. Something that felt like the beginning of healing. Something that felt like home. 6 months passed on the mountain, and Lily learned what seasons felt like when you weren't waiting for everything to end. She watched autumn paint the trees in colors she'd never really noticed before. She helped Samuel stack firewood for winter and learned which logs burned hottest and longest. She started school in town, riding the bus down the mountain each morning and back up each afternoon. The other kids were curious about her at first, but Samuel had taught her it was okay to take her time with new people, so she did. Winter came hard and white, burying the mountain under snow that made everything quiet and clean. Samuel showed her how to track deer prints and rabbit trails. They sat by the fire in the evenings while he carved and she read, the wood stove keeping the cabin warm while wind howled outside. Spring crept in slowly, melting the snow inch by inch. Lily planted seeds in the garden, her hands in the dirt beside Samuel's, and felt something settle in her chest. Not quite peace, not quite trust, but something close. Something like the first green shoots pushing through soil, cautious but determined. She still had nightmares sometimes. Still woke up thinking she was back at the Pratt's farm or the Collier's house. But then she'd see the carved animals on her shelf, hear Samuel moving around in the kitchen, and remember where she was. Remember that this was real. She'd started calling him Samuel instead of Sir about 3 months in. He'd smiled when she did it, like she'd given him a gift. The letter came on a Tuesday in late April. Lily was at school when Mrs. Henderson's car pulled up to the cabin. Samuel was in his workshop, putting the finishing touches on a rocking chair someone had commissioned. He saw the official county vehicle through the window and felt his stomach tighten. Mrs. Henderson climbed out carrying a folder. Her expression was professionally neutral, which Samuel had learned usually meant bad news delivered with bureaucratic politeness. "Samuel," she said as he met her in the yard, "we need to talk." They sat at the kitchen table, the folder between them like a barrier. Mrs. Henderson pulled out papers with official letterheads and stamps. "A relative has come forward," she said without preamble. Lily's mother had a sister, Patricia Holbrook. She lives in Charleston and recently learned about Lily's situation. She's petitioning for custody.